It's unbelievable. In such a humble workshop, they can actually turn what was once dilapidated into something usable. The broken brake parts, which could no longer be repaired, are smashed, recycled, and reworked. It's amazing to see the process unfold. The driver noticed the brakes felt abnormal. He went to the repair shop to have the tire removed, and discovered that the brake parts had broken into pieces. If we had driven just 2 more miles, we would have had a serious accident. Such damage couldn't be fixed with quick fixes like instant noodles anymore. The driver originally wanted to replace it with a new part, but finding a new part locally was difficult. Then the boss spoke up. The broken brake components can be recycled and recast on site, and the price is not expensive, much cheaper than buying a new part. After all, if you lose money, you can earn it back. The brake part was broken and needed replacement. The driver thought 3,000 rupees wasn't too much, so he waved his hand and asked the master to proceed with the repair. First, the master placed a sample of the brake part on the ground. Then, he covered the sample with a sandbox. The box was filled with sand, and the sand was tamped down. A layer of sand was added, and another layer. The sand was filled up until it reached the height of the box. Then the master used his size 43 boot and pressed down hard, ensuring the internal structure was firm. Afterwards, the excess sand was removed. The surface was smooth. To facilitate pouring, a pouring hole was carefully dug out at the foot. With the master's skilled hands, this side of the mold was completed. The sandbox was flipped over to work on the other side. This refined the mold's details. Thus, the prototype of the brake mold slowly took shape. But this is only half of the mold. Next, after inserting a steel pipe into the middle of the sample, the master filled it with molding sand. The same method was used, creating the other half of the mold. Filling. After finishing and smoothing the surface, the other half of the mold is complete. Next, you need to poke a circle of holes in the mold. This helps with exhaust and heat dissipation during pouring. After separating the upper and lower molds, you can see that the general structure of the 2 molds has taken shape. The master then removes the sample. Next, the details of the mold structure are carefully refined. Although it's a workshop, the master has high standards for quality. Once the refinements are complete and all technical requirements are met, the mold is now just 1 step away from being ready for use. That step is to spray the mold as a whole, with a layer of release agent. Then, using a spray gun, the mold is baked and heated, to remove any moisture and pores from the surface. After baking, the upper and lower halves of the mold are reassembled. This forms a complete mold. To prevent misalignment during pouring, heavy objects are used to press down on the mold to increase its weight. Everything is now ready for pouring. The material used for pouring is the recycled brake scrap. After the master breaks it into small pieces, it is thrown into the heavy oil smelting furnace. With the ignition successful, the smelting furnace begins to billow black smoke. Slowly, the furnace turns into a spitting flame. Thus, the smelting of scrap iron begins. After smelting, molten iron is formed. The molten iron is poured into the mold. Casting begins. Once the brake part is cast, it is still red hot. The master carefully removes it from the mold. It is left to cool naturally. Once it cools completely, a brand new brake part appears before your eyes. But this is just a semi-finished product. To meet the size requirements, it needs to be placed on a lathe for further processing. This removes the rough surface of the brake part, making it smoother and more refined. Under the master's skilled craftsmanship, bolt holes are drilled using a drilling jig. Finally, after spray painting for protection, so far, this scene shows that the cast brake parts are now complete. Now, it can be reinstalled into the car. The driver was also amazed when he saw the finished product. He had to admire the exquisite craftsmanship of the master and the remarkable creativity.